And we're back with another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Of course, the Pop Culture Cosmos and the Lakers Fast Break. Go ahead and make sure you like and subscribe to all of our great shows. Plus, if you can give that 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, hopefully you can go ahead and make sure you support us any way you can. Plus, if you ever have any questions, feel free, put it below if you're watching on YouTube. After the fact, we'll get right to it. Also, as well, you can go ahead with Inside Sports FF on Twitter, Inside Sports FF at Gmail, and of course, IS Fantasy Football at yahoo.com. All right, we're getting closer and closer to week 1 in the NFL, but I wanted to make sure I got at least one episode more with my good friend. I wanted to make sure I got him in here. I know his schedule is so busy. His time is at a premium. It is my good friend. Indeed, it is Chris Lardieri. Chris, great to have you here. Looking forward to hearing your insight. Once again, our fantasy football expert. Looking forward to another great start to a fantasy football season.
Great to be back as always. Thank you for fitting me in my ever busy schedule. Dom's got a draft tomorrow in one of his leagues with his friends. I wish I could have reported on that, but unfortunately the schedules don't align. But should have plenty more to talk about after my 2 drafts and then his one extra one to kind of gauge where the drafts landed this year.
No, absolutely. I poked around after we had our first conversation. Late at night, I think I did a Yahoo one this time around. Just wanted to see how the different interactions. And then I plan to do an ESPN one to contrast and compare the 2 different leagues. And of course, I got to sign up once again with your money league that we are going to go ahead and conduct. And that's coming up here, I think, later on this weekend. So looking forward to seeing how that works out over Labor Day weekend with our draft. But again, looking forward to it indeed. But, you know, for a lot of people, they are going through their drafts this week and also next week as well, just before the season starts. The season starts Thursday, September 4th, but I wanted to make sure I got at least one good episode with you before we head on in there. I didn't want to have to rush it next week, but I want to hear your thoughts. It starts off with the Cowboys and Eagles on the 4th of September. Week 1 matchups are around the corner. But first, yesterday, as we record this, were the cut down days for all the teams out there. They cut down to their 53-man rosters. Any surprises therein? Anything that sticks out in the norm? Anybody that might be of concern for those out there looking to go ahead and some of their late draft choices in their draft? Should there be of concern right now, or is it just a standard cut down time period for the NFL right now?
Yeah, I don't think it's like the old days with the expanded rosters and the practice squad. I feel as though, there might be some eyebrow raising cuts, but I feel as the years go on, there's nothing really shocking. The Giants released New Jersey native cult hero Tommy DeVito. I wasn't surprised by that. I was a little more surprised that doesn't look like he's landed on their practice squad yet. But I mean, other than that, I really didn't see anything that moved the needle for me. And guys that are getting cut, it's not like the old days where maybe there's an older player that gets cut and there's just not enough room to keep them on the roster, a veteran of some sort. You'd see those back in the 80s and 90s, but not anymore. I mean, at this point, I think the question is going to be, as we have this one quiet week before the season starts with no preseason games, just injuries and who's going to be healthy and who isn't. I think Matthew Stafford with the Rams is a large looming question right now. That's probably more concern for fantasy owners than any cuts today.
Joe Mixon from Houston also is a concern. Concern to me is slightly because I do have him as a backup, as my 4th running back. But then again, I don't have to wait, but too long because he'll supposedly be back within that 4-week period that he gets, on the mend, so to speak, when he comes off of IR. So 4 weeks out. But again, I have, I think, 3 other. I think I got 4 running backs actually that I think can fit well enough around my whole group to save off against, and whatever Joe Mixon brings me, hopefully this season will be just gravy on top of it. But yeah, I think for some people out there who might have moved Joe Mixon higher, because I think I got him with a ninth round draft pick, as far as it's concerned. So for me, it wasn't a big deal, but for some others who might have drafted a little bit higher based off of his production last year in Houston, it might be a little bit of a concern.
Absolutely, and I know there probably will be people like you who take a flyer on him because yeah, he's going to be out the beginning of the season, but the depth behind him in Houston is lacking to say the least. I know Nick Chubb 3 years ago might have been appealing, but not Nick Chubb post injuries and a lot of wear and tear. So that's another good point, Gerald. Like sometimes you just got to take a flyer on a guy in a middle to late rounds. Everyone's going to kind of bail or stay away from the guys that make the headlines for being injured to start the season. But it's not a season ender. Sometimes it's worth taking those guys and stashing them as opposed to taking, the RB position, maybe an unproven rookie or second year guy who may or may not crack the lineup. If Mixon's healthy, he's the starter in Houston.
Absolutely. And again, if I can stick it out 4 weeks, which I should be able to with the depth I have at running back, I don't see it as much of an issue. I do want to ask, though, you being the New York Giants fan that you are, what are your thoughts on some of the skill positions there in regards to what you're seeing there? New York Giants traditionally aren't a team as of recent years, as you and I have gone over from time to time on this show, as far as their outlets for some of their skill positions, but that might be changing a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. They've got one of the best young wide receivers in football, Malik Neighbors, and given the carousel of mediocrity at quarterback last year is even more impressive the numbers he put up. Remains to be seen what Russell Wilson will do. The knock on him is he can't throw the deep ball anymore, but that didn't stop Neighbors last year. I know he's got this nagging toe injury. I think that'd be more of a concern, but that's one guy you've got to look at. And then on the opposite side of the ball, I think the Giants, they have a tremendous defensive front now with the drafting of Abdul Carter. They've got Burns and Dexter Lawrence has always been awesome, and Kayvon Thibodeau. So, I always advocate don't take a defense or a kicker too high. Maybe this is a year if you wait around long enough, you get a team like the Giants where they might not be that great on paper. They might not have a phenomenal win loss record, but that defense I could see stopping offenses and forcing turnovers. So that might be another position to consider.
Just wanted to make sure you got some time before the start of the season to give some props to a team that you care about, my friend. I know that when we've always talked about New York Giants in the past, in the years that we've been doing this, it's not usually been good news, but I see a light now at the end of the tunnel. It's not bright, it's not blinding, but it's there, and I think that this is a possibility. The New York Giants could look at a wild card this possible year.
No, I think they'll be improved, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
I will never figure this out how a team like the 49ers finishes in last place and has one of the easiest schedules this year. The Giants also finish in last place. So far down, they had a top three draft pick, and yet they have, I believe, it's the fourth hardest schedule in the NFL. If
Of
you look at their
course.
first 6 games, it's just brutal. So I'll never figure out that schedule. So my comment on that, my sarcasm is more geared towards the luck of the draw with their schedule than it is the talent on the field. And then I think too, at what point is the New York media going to start clamoring for Jackson Dart to start playing? They get through these first 6 games. If they're 0-6 or 1-5, I'm sure the chance will start. I know Dart looked good in the preseason, but there've been plenty of young quarterbacks who have, including the much traveled Kenny Pickett. Once with the Pittsburgh Steelers, was thought to be the hope for the future. So while I'm not down on Dart, I think we just got to temper expectations. Hopefully, he'll get some reps this year if the team's out of the playoff hunt early, and we'll see what we've got.
Okay, there you go. I just thought maybe like an 8-8 season might be
And
in
that
play.
that would be like a playoff berth, Gerald.
Okay.
they win more than like 3 or 4 games. I think that's room for improvement. But yeah, the schedule makers don't seem to want that, I guess, this year.
Well, there you go. All right. It's again they are in not in the AFC least. The AFC East is a little bit of going to be a bear this year again. So we will see what happens there. But I wanted to make sure you got some time in for your NYG to make sure they go ahead and at least get some love right now. We'll see how it goes from there. But NFL week one for you, I wanted to go ahead and make sure that you got some shots in there. I know you're going into your drafting positions here in a little bit, but seeing how this week, this first week will match up, what are your thoughts on, let's say, for instance, the Chiefs, the Chargers coming up on Friday, Cowboys and Eagles on Thursday? I mean, now in this different media schedule that's coming out there where more days, more games are being shown, all for television on several different formats. It's going to be really hard to keep up.
Gonna need a roadmap to keep track of what games on where. Dom and I were just talking about that first Friday night game with the Chargers and Chiefs down in Brazil, which I'm looking forward to. But I believe
Mhm.
it's on actual YouTube. We have YouTube TV here in the Lardieri household, but apparently you can watch it on YouTube. So I'm kind of hoping, YouTube and YouTube TV kind of cross the hall and talk to each other, and they put it on YouTube TV, so I don't have to go and switch to my YouTube app. But yeah, if you're a little older than us, let's say, and you grew up on traditional TV and cable TV, I don't know how you keep track of these things. Half the time I've got to ask Dom or Google it. So yeah, it's a good game. But I think it's really interesting. Roger Goodell rolled this out last year with that Packers Eagles game down in Brazil, and he doesn't care. He's taking on high school football. You and I, Gerald, know, living on the West Coast, how big that is on Friday nights out west, and even in places like Texas and the South. Like, high school football is almost as big as college in some of these towns. So Goodell's like, I don't care. We're putting an NFL game on Friday night. He's taking on the NBA on Christmas Day. He's taking Christmas Day games to Netflix. So he's got all the power. He's a steam train chugging along.
It is going to be a juggernaut. The NFL has already, and it's going to be, we'll see on many media outlets, even more popular. And if it does go straight to regular old YouTube, the numbers could be outrageous since everybody can access it as far as it's concerned around the world. So we will see what happens with that as far as these new ventures that the NFL is going into. But wanted to make sure I caught that for NFL Week One for you. Is there anything that sticks out to you as far as what you see? I know the Cowboys and Eagles. Cowboys are used to drama coming into any game that they have, and the Micah Parsons drama that has laid itself out hasn't helped things, I guess, for the Cowboys. But they're trying to play it off as they usually do. There's always some sort of drama in Jerrytown. Your thoughts on that game, or is there any others sticking out to you for a fantasy matchup worth watching?
Yeah, I don't expect the Cowboys to put up too much of a fight. uh, Home night game in Philly to open the season, and I'm sure they're getting their rings or whatever other raising the banner, whatever they do these days. I just don't think with or without Parsons, the Cowboys are going to be able to put up much of a fight against the defending champs. As I said earlier, really looking forward to Chiefs Chargers. Hopefully, the field's not as sloppy as it was last year. And then the first Sunday night game, Ravens and Bills. I mean, that's always an excellent matchup, whether they meet in the regular season or in January. It's going to be back and forth. I think that'll be a good one. And then another one kind of falling lower on the radar, it seems, one of the late window games that first Sunday, the Lions and Packers. How will the Lions do with Ben Johnson no longer in control of the offense? He's moved on to be the head coach of the Bears. And let's see if Jordan Love's recovered from an up and down season last year. And the Packers, although they were a playoff team, maybe they look to make a deeper run this year into the playoffs.
You will see what happens, my friend. Looking forward to it as always. Once again, it is Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Chris Lardieri and me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for watching this thing. If you have any comments, questions, thoughts on your draft upcoming, or thoughts on the early part of the season, please always let us know in the comments below on YouTube, or also as well, go ahead and hit us up, isfantasyfootball at yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter, and also Gmail as well. My friend, like I said, there's still drafts to be taking place as we record this, but I wanted to make sure we got this in I know that some last minute draft observations are being looked at. I know that we talked about some of the injuries that are already available for Joe Mixon, Matthew Stafford in question. I want to ask you your thoughts on the quarterback situation. We talked about, of course, the highs with Allen, with Hurts, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the top five we discussed on our primer that we gave everybody out there. Is there any other quarterbacks to keep an eye on? I know that Michael Penix Jr. He's getting a little bit of love out there. I don't know exactly if his accuracy is there yet, but he does have some premium uh, top level skill players at some skill positions in Drake London and Bijan Robinson that he can throw to that might make his stats much more easier to go ahead and ascertain. Your thoughts on someone like that, or is there someone else that's maybe still out there that you might be thinking that people might be interested in for a backup or a spot starter?
Yeah, Penix is definitely an interesting one. If you can stash him on the bench, you never know. He could be this year's Jared Goff, or he could be a complete bust. We saw what happened with Sam Darnold last year. You had Sam Darnold on your team in the playoffs. You were pretty happy up until maybe the last week or so. So there's going to be someone that I don't want to say comes out of nowhere, but at least exceeds expectations. So my advice to you is, even if you think you've got a great quarterback like a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson, for instance, you've still got to have a backup. You never know if these guys can get hurt. You never know, in a bye week, you're maybe in a must-win situation, and Allen's off that week with the Bills, and you don't want to just go out there on the scrap heap of waiver wire and look for just any plug-in starter. So that's one guy I think there could be compelling. As we've talked about recently, Brock Purdy with the 49ers, between that easy schedule, the fact that they were decimated with injuries last year and he held his own. I think, Kyle Shanahan's a quarterback whisperer. And if they get that offense back up and running, whether it's McCaffrey or Brian Robinson at running back, I think he's got a lot of weapons and I think he'll have a bounce back year. So that's another guy, kind of, I don't want to say falling below the radar, but he's not talked about as much as a lot of these other guys that everyone seems to fawn over year.
Any others in the skill positions that we didn't mention in our primer that you want people to know about that may be available in those middle rounds? Because as we talked about in our primer, those middle rounds, I think, is the key. I mean, everybody in their top three will probably get players that will make a big impact on their team. The key is fleshing out your roster with quality depth around it in those middle rounds.
Absolutely. And I think where you really got to build that up is at the running back and wide receiver position. I've been on both sides of this trade over the past few years with the Seattle Seahawks. I really like Kenneth Walker, but I'm skeptical that he can last a full season. If you're willing to take a chance on him and he plays, I think he's a tremendous running back to have on your team. If someone else takes him, I would go and snap up Zach Charbonnet, because when he plays and he gets the reps when Walker's out, he's been impressive too. I've had him once before. And then two, with the Jets, everyone talks about Brees Hall. I can't believe last year how high some people were taking him, but they've got a backup, a young running back out of Wisconsin, Brandon Allen, who I think, if Aaron Glenn loses patience with Hall or he's just not producing, I think Allen could pop in there and take the reins as the starter. So those are just, at least at the running back position, I don't want to say sleepers, but guys just to kind of keep on your radar. They're not going to be up there in the first and second round, but like you said, in the middle rounds, you find those diamonds in the rough. Sometimes guys that aren't even starters. I think last year was a perfect example of Bucky Irving. We contemplated taking him. All the signs were pointing that he wasn't going to play much to start the season, but it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So sometimes it's good, take a flyer and say the 10th round on someone, stash them on your bench, and hope in the second half of the season, when you're really making your push to the playoffs, that you've got yourself an every week starter at a skill position.
Absolutely, indeed. And I know that something we usually don't address right away are some of the maybe swing positions that might help you win a game or two, like the tight end, defense, and the kicker are concerned. Do you target those earlier than most do? Let's say like the seventh, eighth, ninth, when I start seeing them start to, at least a couple of them, pick up. Or do you just wait it to the end and just say, I'm going to just stream them as far as the kicker, especially the kicker and the defense are concerned? Tight ends, to me, it's like, okay, there's 3 or 4 we're taking. Then after that, maybe streaming might be an option for them as well.
That's what I tend to do. I mean, we've had years where we got lucky and we had George Kittle when he had one of his excellent years, for instance. So if there's a tight end there early and there's already been a run on a couple of the top ones, I think it's worth taking a flyer then. If you miss out on that just because of the way the draft falls and goes back and forth, I agree. Wait around. Maybe there's a rookie. I mean, Brock Bowers, I know he was highly regarded coming out of college, but no one was talking about taking him in the first 3 or 4 rounds last year in fantasy. This year, he's a must-have. A lot of people think he's a top tight end in fantasy coming into this year. With kickers and
Mhm.
defenses, I used to try and wait for the last couple rounds. It all depends on when there's a run on them. So what I tend to do is kind of wait. I want to say like, 10th, 12th round, sometimes you might be able to get a good one. But if you don't get one of the top defenses where you're just playing them week after week and it's a no brainer, then wait around. But don't wait too long because then sometimes you don't have much of a choice of what's left. I feel like with kicker, there's more depth and a lot of them are streaky. I mean, now, back in the day, it was all Justin Tucker and that's another story for another time about what went on off the field with him, but at least on the field, everyone wanted Justin Tucker last year and he had a disappointing year. So I feel as though with the kickers, you can take someone later than maybe a quality defense. And then, like you said, just start streaming them or flipping them if they're not producing. Sometimes, like when you get to the colder months or the weather elements come into play, you're like, I don't want a kicker playing outdoors in Cleveland or Chicago. So let me try and find someone playing in Arizona or maybe in the Dome in Detroit and Atlanta. So things to think about. But yeah, I don't kickers are important, but I don't think you really need to reach on one anymore.
Once again, it is Chris Lardieri. Go ahead and make sure you check him out each and every time out right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football, along with me, Gerald Glassford. Again, if you guys have any questions, always isfantasyfootball at yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter and Gmail as well. And then again, where you're seeing this, whether it's on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel, Lakers Fast Break, or our brand new Inside Sports Fantasy Football YouTube channels, please go ahead and put your comments below. If there's questions, last minute draft advice that you need, please go ahead and make sure you hit us up right there for you, and we'll get the answer for you ASAP indeed. But before we head on out, you know that time is coming when we talk about the different weeks in the NFL, the odds. Again, this is for entertainment purposes only. And as I know, sports gambling is really coming to the spotlight, both for me, who covers the NBA, the NFL as well. I've seen, news reports as far as, just the effects on sports gambling. We've seen it also as well with certain scandals that have come down in the past 12 to 18 months in regards to sports gambling. But if you do it wisely, you do it for entertainment purposes, then you might want to look as far as some advice that we try to give from time to time. And when we do, you go ahead and head on out, step on out to the yard, take a look at everything going on in our cul-de-sac right there. Everything's all nice and dandy. But we look over to the left, the dog yawning, stretching out from just hibernation almost because, the dog's been asleep for a while. But guess what? Woof, woof, woof. We return back to the doghouse. So, what underdogs do you have in mind for this week one, my friend?
So I'm not quite committed yet to take a pick for a week one underdog. What I've got instead, because it seems to be all the rage these days with futures and other sort of bets, going to go back to one of my old staples, the over under win totals. I know these lines tend to adjust and get priced accordingly after the draft and free agency happens, for instance. But poking around, there's a team out there and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put where my money where my mouth is. But Dom and I were talking about this, and there's a team that everyone was really down on last year, and towards the latter half of the year, due to a car accident, one Young
Okay.
finally got his starting job back in Carolina and actually
Bryce
showed
Young.
some signs
Okay.
of life. And
Mhm.
Chuba Hubbard had a nice job at running back last year, especially if you had him in fantasy like we did. And I feel the Carolina Panthers in a very weak NFC South. I know the Buccaneers just automatically seem to win by default. I think they can turn things around. Can they win the division? I don't know. They'd have to be like the Commanders last year and everything click and fire and go perfectly according to plan. But year two under Dave Canales, I think Young's got his confidence back. He likes that offense. I saw one spot the win total was 6.5. Let's take a flyer on the over and say, you know what, the Carolina Panthers win 7 games. They go 7-10. You cover your bet. But I will say I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they even overperform that magic 6.5 number. So I think that's a team to keep an eye on this year. Don't know if they'll be a playoff team, but I don't think they'll be a doormat like the New Orleans Saints, for instance.
There you go. The Saints will be on the road against the Cardinals. That's a 6.5 point spread as of now. I am leading right now. I'm leaning towards, if I got to give thoughts on any game in that first weekend, I probably lean towards the Falcons and the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are 2.5 point favorites, I believe, on the road, if I'm not mistaken, over the Falcons. I think I might take the Falcons at home. Again, if Phoenix gets his start off, hits London, Bijan gets a good game. I understand the Buccaneers had a pretty good year. Obviously, there's some concerns there as far as the wideouts with the injuries that they had last year. Is that moving over? Is their quarterback going to have the same kind of consistency that he had last year? Because it came out from virtually nowhere to go ahead and have that kind of season. Did they play up above their heads last year in Tampa Bay? We'll find out maybe starting in week 1 in Atlanta.
Gerald, that's not a bad pick. I think everyone is kind of
Two
underestimating
and a
the
half is a
Falcons.
spread.
Yeah, but also too, the Buccaneers are really going to miss Tristan Wirfs. I don't know what happened there. He didn't have surgery right away, but he's a phenomenal left tackle. And if teams can get the rush on Baker Mayfield, I don't think he's the same quarterback as he was the past few seasons. They've got some injuries at wide receiver too. So, if there's a year where the Buccaneers can fall from their usual title in the NFC South, this could be it.
We will find out indeed. But once again, it is Chris Lardieri along with me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for watching this thing. If we have the availability, we'll try to sneak in one more show before the start of the season. But I wanted to make sure I got this one in. My friend, last minute drafts are going to go on, including one of ours that's going to come up here in the coming days. Any last minute advice for those that are kind of sweating it out before they hit that enter the draft room button?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at all the mock drafts and draft rankings and whatnot. I think you should go into it with one, not because you need to follow it like it's gospel, but just so you know when you're looking at a player, it's kind of within range, or hey, this guy fell, or maybe this one is a reach. I mean, ultimately, it's up to you to decide, but I think it's good to have a reference just to see what available players are out there. And then two, don't overthink it. I don't know. I'm so tired of reading articles about like, do you do the old school two running backs? Do you not take a quarterback until later on? Do you take a quarterback right away? Do you take a tight end early? Don't overthink it. Fortunately, in a lot of these leagues, the online drafts, the draft order isn't set until an hour or two before. So you kind of don't know what your draft position is. That bugs me a little bit. But once you do know, you can kind of tell, like, all right, here's who I think that I'm at spot 5. Here's who the top 4 players kind of consensus looking at these rankings will be in front of me. Um, I'm not going to tell you in the first round, you've got to get a running back, you've got to get a wide receiver. All I will say is diversify. Don't double up on running backs. Don't take just wide receivers because, as we all know, in the first 3 to 4 rounds of the draft, there's going to be a run on one, if not both of those positions. And then, two, especially at the turn later in the first round, you've got to decide, do I want a Josh Allen? Do I want a Lamar Jackson? Do I want to wait a little while and maybe get a Jalen Hurts? You've got to decide if you get that proverbial franchise fantasy quarterback, you take him in the second round, let's say, then you're set for a while. And then you really need the building blocks around, all right, got to get depth at wide receiver, running back, got to think about potentially a tight end. And as we mentioned earlier, don't forget about your defense and your kicker. I personally don't think you should reach on one. I've seen defenses go as high in the 9th and 10th round. I think that's a little too high unless you're drafting the 85 Bears or 2001 Ravens, but that's just my opinion. So, yeah, and as you hit on earlier, Gerald, those middle rounds, it's not necessarily where you win the league outright, but it definitely helps. It can definitely fill in the blanks for your third wide receiver, for a running back you need to plug in when there's an injury. Just like a regular professional sports team, make sure you've got a deep bench.
Absolutely, indeed. But make sure you also stay in touch with us right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We got it covered for you. Looking forward to a great fantasy football season. Looking forward to Chris Lardieri stopping by as much as he can to give us that wise fantasy football sage advice that has won him leagues. I've won leagues too. So, but you know what? It always sounds better coming from Chris because he just comes in there. He knows exactly what's going on. He has to keep up with his son. So you know he has to keep up with what's going on in the NFL indeed. Because yeah, if you don't, your son will let you know,
Yeah,
Chris.
you're lost. You're in the dust.
Exactly, indeed. Good luck to you on your upcoming drafts and to your son as well.
You too.
Again, if you guys, thank you. If you guys need any help and advice, please, once again, let us know. isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter, Gmail, or just drop the line right there on our YouTube channels. So for Chris Lardieri, it's Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for watching this thing. We'll be back. Hopefully, I can sneak one more, but I just wanted to make sure I got one in there before the start of the season. Another great season is on the way. Brought to you, of course, with the fantasy football insight like no other right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football.